At 42, Marcus Reed had built his tech company from scratch into an $8 billion giant in just 15 years. He'd been on the cover of Forbes and invited as a guest speaker at 3 different universities. But when he sat down in first class on Flight 419, none of that mattered, because flight attendant Jessica Miller and Captain Richard Hensley looked at his skin color and decided he didn't belong there. Marcus's quiet resistance and the scandal that followed would rip the mask off corporate racism and spark the most sweeping reform in aviation history. Before the story starts, drop a comment. Which city are you watching from? And if you stand for justice and equality, share this story and subscribe to our channel. Together, we can make our voices stronger. The February morning at Chicago O'Hare was brutally cold, the kind of cold that made travelers hurry through the terminal with hunched shoulders and tight expressions. Marcus Reed moved through the pre-dawn crowd with the calm efficiency of someone who'd spent half his life in airports, his carry-on rolling smoothly behind him as he headed toward Gate C-17 for Flight 419 to Los Angeles. At 42, Marcus had built Technova Systems from a garage startup into an $8 billion enterprise that revolutionized cloud computing infrastructure. His face had graced the covers of Forbes, Fortune, and Time. He'd given commencement speeches at Stanford, MIT, and Howard. He employed 12,000 people across 6 countries and had been named one of the most influential CEOs in America 3 years running. But as he approached the first-class boarding line, none of that mattered. What mattered was what people saw first: a black man in jeans and a hoodie, carrying a backpack that could have come from any college campus. Marcus had learned long ago that success didn't insulate you from prejudice. It just made the sting more bitter when it happened. He'd chosen his clothing deliberately today. Tomorrow, he was speaking at a tech diversity conference in LA, and he wanted to travel comfortably. His usual tailored suit stayed in his checked luggage. The hoodie, Technova branded, but still just a hoodie, felt like freedom. Or it should have. First-class passengers, welcome to board Flight 419 with service to Los Angeles, the gate agent announced. Marcus stepped forward, his boarding pass already pulled up on his phone, showing Seat 2A in crisp digital letters. He entered the aircraft, nodding politely to the flight attendants stationed at the door. One of them, Jessica Miller according to her name tag, smiled automatically, but her eyes flickered with something else as they moved from Marcus's face to his casual clothing and back again. Marcus found his seat, 2A, window side, exactly as his boarding pass indicated. He stowed his backpack in the overhead compartment and settled into the leather seat, pulling out his tablet to review the speech he'd be giving tomorrow. Around him, other first-class passengers were doing the same, opening laptops, ordering pre-flight drinks, settling into the comfortable bubble of premium travel. Then Jessica appeared at his row, her smile tight and professional. "Excuse me, sir. I need to verify your seat assignment." Marcus looked up from his tablet, keeping his expression neutral despite the familiar knot forming in his stomach. "Of course. I'm in 2A, as shown on my boarding pass." "May I see your boarding pass, please?" Marcus held up his phone, the digital pass clearly visible with his name, seat number, and first-class designation. Jessica studied it for longer than necessary, her eyes narrowing slightly. "And may I see your photo ID?" The request wasn't standard procedure for domestic first-class travel, and Marcus knew it. But he also knew that arguing would only make the situation worse. He pulled out his wallet and handed over his driver's license. Jessica examined it carefully, comparing the photo to Marcus's face as if he might be using someone else's identification. Other passengers were starting to notice now, conversations dying as heads turned to watch the interaction. "Mr. Reed," Jessica said slowly, "I'm going to need to verify this with our gate agent. Sometimes there are issues with upgraded seats, or—" "I didn't upgrade," Marcus interrupted gently. "I purchased a first-class ticket directly through your website 3 weeks ago. The confirmation email is also on my phone if you'd like to see it." Jessica's lips pressed into a thin line. "Sir, I'm just following procedure. We have to ensure all passengers are in their correct seats." Marcus glanced around the cabin. Not a single other first-class passenger had been asked to verify their seat assignment. Not the elderly white woman across the aisle. Not the young white businessman 2 rows back. Just him. "I understand," Marcus said quietly. "But I am in my correct seat. I have my boarding pass, my ID, and my purchase confirmation. What additional verification do you need?" Jessica's hand moved to her radio. "I need to call the captain about this situation." "Situation?" Marcus repeated, his voice still calm but edged with steel. "What situation?" "I'm a passenger sitting in the seat I paid for." By now, the entire first-class cabin was watching. A woman in 3C had her phone out, angled toward Marcus and Jessica. Another passenger whispered to his seatmate behind his hand. The atmosphere had shifted from pre-flight routine to tense confrontation. Captain Richard Hensley emerged from the cockpit, his silver hair and decorated uniform commanding immediate attention. He approached Marcus's row with the confident stride of someone accustomed to authority. "What seems to be the problem here?" Hensley asked, directing his question to Jessica rather than Marcus. "This passenger is in a first-class seat, but I'm having difficulty verifying his ticket, Captain," Jessica explained, her voice taking on a tone of concern that hadn't been there before. "I wanted to check with you before we proceed with boarding." Hensley looked at Marcus, his assessment quick and apparently decisive. "Sir, do you have documentation showing you purchased a first-class ticket?" Marcus held up his phone again, showing the boarding pass, then swiped to reveal his confirmation email with the ticket price clearly visible. $2,847 for a first-class seat. Hensley glanced at it briefly. "The system sometimes has glitches with online bookings," Hensley said, though his tone suggested he didn't actually believe there was a glitch. "If you're uncomfortable remaining in this seat, we'd be happy to accommodate you in our premium economy section. It's very comfortable, and we can refund the price difference." The offer was phrased politely, but the message was clear. Marcus should move to the back of the plane where passengers who looked like him belonged. "I'm comfortable in the seat I purchased," Marcus replied, his voice steady. "I'm a frequent flyer on this airline. My status is platinum, and I'm in my assigned seat with valid documentation. I'm not moving." The woman in 3C was definitely recording now. Another passenger had joined her, phone held high. Marcus could see the red recording indicators, could imagine the videos already being captioned and shared. Hensley's expression hardened. "Sir, if we feel there's a security concern or a passenger is making others uncomfortable." "How exactly am I making anyone uncomfortable?" Marcus interrupted, his patience finally showing cracks. "By sitting in my assigned seat? By being black and first class?" The words hung in the air like an accusation, which of course they were. Several passengers gasped. Jessica's face flushed red. Hensley's jaw tightened. "Sir, I'm going to ask you one more time to voluntarily move to another section of the aircraft," Hensley said, his voice dropping to a tone that suggested this was Marcus's final warning. "If you refuse, I have the authority to remove you from this flight for disrupting our boarding process." Marcus felt the rage building inside him. The accumulated frustration of 1,000 small indignities, of being followed in stores despite his Amex Black Card, of being stopped by police in his own neighborhood, of being assumed to be the help rather than the boss in his own company headquarters. But he also felt something else, calculation. He reached into his pocket, not for his wallet this time, but for a business card he always carried. Plain white cardstock with elegant black lettering. Marcus Reed, Chief Executive Officer, Technova Systems. "Captain Hensley," Marcus said calmly, placing the card on his tray table where the recording phones could capture it. "Before you remove me from this flight, I think you should know who you're removing. I'm not just a passenger. I'm the CEO of Technova Systems, the company that provides the cloud infrastructure for your airline's entire booking and operations system. I'm also a major shareholder in your parent company through my investment portfolio. And right now, several passengers are recording this interaction, which will be viral within hours." The color drained from Hensley's face as recognition dawned. Jessica actually took a step backward, her eyes widening with horror as she understood the magnitude of her mistake. "Mr. Reed," Hensley stammered. We didn't realize. You didn't realize because you didn't ask, Marcus said quietly. You didn't verify. You didn't follow actual procedures. You saw a black man in a hoodie and decided I didn't belong in first class, despite my boarding pass, my ID, and my payment confirmation. You saw my skin color first, and everything else second. The cabin had gone completely silent. Even the sounds of boarding in economy class seemed to have faded, as if the entire aircraft was holding its breath. Jessica's voice was barely a whisper. Mr. Reed, I am so sorry. I made a terrible mistake. I don't know what I was thinking. That's the problem, Marcus replied. You weren't thinking. You were operating on assumptions and biases, and you dressed them up as procedure to make them seem legitimate. Hensley pulled out his phone, his hands visibly shaking as he dialed. I need to contact our operations center immediately. This is a code red situation. Marcus shook his head. I don't want you to contact operations to save your job, Captain. I want you to contact them because this incident represents a systemic problem in your airline, and it needs to be addressed at the highest level. Within minutes, the aircraft's PA system crackled to life with a voice that clearly wasn't standard boarding announcements. This is Susan Martinez, Vice President of Customer Relations for Atlantic Airways, speaking from our operations center. We are aware of an incident occurring on Flight 419, and we are addressing it in real time. Mr. Reed, we sincerely apologize for the treatment you've experienced. This is completely unacceptable. Marcus remained seated, his expression calm despite the chaos his revelation had created. Ms. Martinez, I appreciate the apology. But what I need from Atlantic Airways isn't an apology to me. What I need is a commitment to systematic change so this doesn't happen to the next passenger who doesn't have a CEO title or viral videos to protect them. The woman recording from 3C called out. Mr. Reed is right. I watched the whole thing. He showed his ticket multiple times, and they kept questioning him. They didn't ask anyone else for verification. Other passengers murmured agreement. The businessman who'd whispered earlier now spoke up loudly. I fly first class every week. I've never once been asked to verify my seat. This was discrimination, plain and simple. Martinez's voice came through the speaker again. Mr. Reed, you have our commitment to immediate action. Flight attendant Jessica Miller and Captain Richard Hensley are being removed from duty effective immediately pending a full investigation. We're also implementing emergency protocol reviews of our boarding procedures. Jessica began crying, understanding that her career was over. Hensley stood rigid, his decorated uniform suddenly looking like a costume rather than a symbol of authority. But Marcus felt no triumph, just exhaustion and sadness that it had come to this. I don't want revenge, Marcus said into the cabin, knowing his words were being recorded by multiple phones. I want reform. I want mandatory bias training for every employee. I want diverse hiring practices. I want transparent reporting on discrimination complaints. I want Atlantic Airways to become the industry leader in inclusion, not because you got caught, but because you choose to do better. The flight was delayed 2 hours while new crew members were brought in. Marcus finally made it to Los Angeles, where his arrival was met by media crews who'd already seen the viral videos. His speech at the diversity conference the next day took on new meaning, his personal experience adding weight to his call for systematic change in corporate America. Atlantic Airways followed through on every commitment Marcus demanded. Jessica Miller and Captain Hensley were terminated, their cases becoming training examples of how unconscious bias destroys careers and lives. The airline implemented the most comprehensive anti-discrimination program in the industry, setting standards that competitors rushed to match. Marcus used his platform and his experience to launch the Reed Foundation for Travel Equality, providing legal support for passengers facing discrimination and pushing for federal legislation requiring airlines to report bias incidents publicly. The videos from Flight 419 became teaching tools in business schools, diversity trainings, and civil rights discussions. Not because they showed a satisfying moment of instant karma, but because they captured something more important, the quiet dignity of a man refusing to accept injustice, and the power of using privilege and platform to demand change that helps everyone. 6 months later, Marcus flew first class again, on Atlantic Airways, deliberately. The crew knew who he was, treated him with genuine respect, and had been trained to treat all passengers the same way. The difference was palpable and profound. As the plane lifted off, Marcus thought about all the other passengers who'd faced similar discrimination without the resources to fight back, without the platform to demand change, without the privilege that came with power and wealth. His victory wasn't complete until their dignity was protected too. And so the work continued, one flight at a time, one policy at a time, one company at a time, proving that real change requires both the courage to speak up and the commitment to ensure that speaking up creates lasting transformation for everyone who comes after.